There you go. All right, welcome back. Today we are talking about balance plates versus macros, and all of that falls into that big category of nutrition. And I want to break it down for you. So, number one, we're going to go step by step on how to actually go through with either of these approaches, and then the pros and cons of each. And I think you'll find pretty easily, like I prefer one over the other. And ultimately, the goal is to make your life easier, to make your life more realistic, and to give you a tool that will be helpful for you versus something that just takes up a lot of time and doesn't necessarily get you the results that you need. So you'll find that I have very clearly one of these as my preference, and it's the way that I work with all my clients. So we'll break it down. My goal for you is to walk away with something that you can use. This is a tool that you can use. Uh, of course, what I'm not giving you is like, here's your exact approach. But I am going to, at the end, I'll give you a link. You can book a call with me. We can calculate, hey, this is what I think it would look like for you if you want to break it down like that. We could also look at what you are currently eating and why this makes sense versus this doesn't. So I will give you that specifics. Knowing that this is one piece of the puzzle, right? Nutrition is really key. It is also not the only thing that will help you lose weight. It's definitely important. It's not the only thing. So, as I'm talking, know that this is more generic, right? It's meant to be appropriate for everyone. Nutrition is appropriate for everyone who wants to lose weight. And yet, it's not necessarily what exactly you need to do, but I think it's a really important tool to get you started. So I want to say that like here's what I'm thinking as we walk through this. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in for today. And I'll move my face. We are in day 4 of this series. So this is the finished last series for today for this week. I will not be doing a series tomorrow. Tomorrow, I have something else that is on my schedule. So Monday through Thursday this week, Monday through Thursday next week. This last one is in teal because I really want to emphasize that this is a piece of the puzzle. And so I'm putting it all together when we meet on next Thursday. So in 1 week from today, that's where we'll go into more depth. So these are about 20 minutes. That one's probably going to be about an hour, and putting all the pieces together so you have a strategy that makes sense for you. So directing you to that for sure. All right, so today's topic is balance plate versus macros. I don't know where I'm gonna put my face where it's not in the way. I'll put it down in the corner. So we'll talk about how to follow each approach. So I'll walk you through the steps, the pros and cons of each, and ultimately one of these tools will work for you. So figuring out which one makes sense and why it makes sense so you can actually follow through with it. So that's your goal by the end is like, what can I actually do to see results? Going in the wrong direction. Oops. There we go. So we'll start with macros first. So macros, and I'll explain what they are and explain a little bit more about them. So when we look at macros, macros are your macronutrients. So these are the major food groups. And so I'm not talking about the pyramid, and I know they've just revised the food pyramid and so on. This is a little bit different from that. Your macronutrients fall into 3 categories, and this is like the basic building block, if you will, of a food. And so food can be broken down into protein, right? There's 20 amino acids. Food can be broken down into carbohydrates. These are the saccharides. These are the sugars that we eat. Glucose being like the one that our body really prefers, but we see that in different forms. We know carbs as being like the bad, quote unquote, macro, because a low carb diet usually does result in weight loss, at least in the short term. And so often people say, "Oh, I'm eating low carb." And so I'm here to say, and I will say this from the very beginning, I don't recommend a low carb diet. I don't find it very sustainable in the long run. And so I include carbohydrates in macros and then also in balance plates. So you'll see them show up in both. The third and final group also gets a bad rap because fats, when we think about fat, number one, we don't want to be fat. So that sounds bad by itself. Fats are also connected to having high cholesterol or high triglycerides or something like that. However, we do need all of these food groups and we need them in the right amounts. in order to have a healthy body, which really is the goal more than just losing weight. We'd rather just be healthy. But then when we add in, hey, I need to move from my current weight to maybe a healthier weight for my body, then we put these into like different amounts essentially to get us to our goals. All of these are different ways that our body gets nutrients. There are different ways that our body gets energy. And so we do need all of these truly. But usually what I hear and when I like turn on Instagram and I'm looking at different people's, I see protein being like, oh, the holy grail of macros. Like I need to focus on protein, make sure I'm getting enough. And genuinely, I find like carbs and fats are way underutilized. They're not talked about. Sometimes they're like stigmatized, like we're not supposed to eat them. And so I'm here to hopefully dispel the myth that like we really do need all of these food groups. So throughout today, you're going to see me talk about it under macros. You're going to see me talk about it under balanced plate. Okay. So we do need all these food groups and we need them in the right amounts. Now, when we are counting macros, what we are doing is counting the grams, and we might weigh it in ounces, but it moves into grams. So, how many grams of each of these types of food do we eat in a day? So, that's simply when we use the tool of counting macros, it's like how much of these foods are we eating in a day? Okay, so let's talk about how to count macros. Now that we kind of know what macros are, the tool of counting macros is dialing in your target for macros, and we'll get there in a second. But essentially, there's two steps to do that. You have to know exactly how much of the food you are eating because you need to know how many grams of that food to input. And then when you count them, you're putting them usually into an app. My Fitness Pal, Lose It. I use an app called Trainerize. Like there's lots of apps. Some of them even can scan barcodes and so on. And so you put in exactly how much food of each type that you are going to eat, and it spits out how many macros you have. And then that translates into calories, right? Calories being just overall energy for the day, not as specific of how we want, like 1600 calories of chocolate cake looks very different than 1600 calories of lettuce, right? So when we are looking at macros, we are more specific, but it does require a very specific input. And so you see the food scale. Usually what people tell me is, oh yeah, I've been weighing out my chicken, I've been weighing out my rice, and they weigh it and then they put in, oh, I had exactly 53 grams of chicken or whatever. And so when you put it into your app, the good news is we don't have to calculate it. The app does it for you. And so it tells you, oh, if you had granola, that's 15 grams, that equals 1.24 grams of protein and 11 grams of carbs, and so on. So for each meal, you can be very specific on how much you're eating and how much that translates into the goals you've set for yourself. And so generally if I have clients that are counting macros, the goal is to be plus or minus 5 grams of each food group a day. So if your protein goal is 120 grams and you get 115, you get your gold star for the day. If were an overachiever and you got above 120, great. But within 5 grams of that is the goal. And so you can calculate that. All right, so what is your macro goal? And if you want, while you're listening to me, or if you're watching the replay, you can pause this because we could do a little bit of a fun exercise here. But essentially, it depends on your numbers. And so if you were to input your you could type in any macros calculator, like macroscalculator.com or whatever, and you would input your height, you would input your current weight, you would input your age because age matters. You would say, oh, I work out moderately. I work out 3 times a week. Oh, I work out a lot. I work out 6 days a week. I don't work out at all, whatever. And then your weight loss goals. Do you want to lose 1 pound a week, which is, I would say on average, like half a pound to 2 pounds a week is a good goal. If you are working on weight loss, that is a safe goal. And so you can put that in and it is going to spit out a number, and I'm 5'0". And so when I put this in, it's like, yeah, you need like 1,217 calories a day and I don't even know the macros breakdown honestly anymore. Starting to tell you more about my feelings for this, but it's usually a very low calorie amount. but it can give you good insight on how much you should eat per day. You could literally type this prompt in to ChatGPT. In fact, I did that. That's a screenshot of ChatGPT right here, telling me the prompt I should add and all the information that you need. Um, and so, what you need are your age, your height, your weight, your goal weight, how often you work out, and what it's going to spit out to you is a calorie target, 1200, 1700, whatever. And it's going to tell you how much you need in protein, carbs, and fat. Okay. And then you simply would follow that. That's your tool. And you use an app, you input the food you eat, and you input it into your app. And then, you know, the numbers don't lie. You're either hitting your goals or you're not hitting your macro goals for the day. So let's walk through the pros and cons of this. I have used this for clients, and I've hired two fitness coaches in the past, and both of them used that for me when I was their client. And I think it works, and I think it only works for certain people. So I'll explain. There are some pros to this, like having a very specific numeric goal to hit. It's clear. You either hit it or you didn't. And so it's kind of black and white in that approach. And if you follow it, I would say it's probably going to work pretty well. You're probably going to see results. The apps are really well developed. So apps are accurate. So you, like I said, you could scan a barcode. It's going to tell you exactly what it is. If it, as long as you're putting in the right amounts, it's going to give you a really close estimate to what you are actually eating. And when you have a coach to monitor your progress, it's really easy. They're going to have like a screen and it's going to say, oh, here's your weekly progress. You hit your nutrition 5 days out of the week or 7 days out of the week or whatever. And so it's easy for them to monitor your progress and give you feedback. And I think those are all really good pros. And I see why people use this. For me and for my clients, I think there are a lot of cons to macros. So, talking through them. What I hear from clients or even just like people I'm talking to, and this was my personal experience as well. So, it's time consuming. You have to weigh out your food because you have to be really specific. And then you have to go and input usually every ingredient separately, which means if it's time consuming and it's hard, you might not be doing this for very long. It might feel really hard, so you stop, right? It also can feel restrictive. And so I've had clients come in and they're like, I was anorexic before. I had bulimia before. I've had really bad self-esteem before. And so I can't do something restrictive because it's going to offset my OCD. It's going to put me in a really bad state. And if I feel restricted, I know that I'm going to either binge eat in the future or totally fall off in the future. And I've done it before, so I don't want to do it again. That is word for word what I've heard from many people now. Talking more from like that nutrition standpoint. So those are like very valid reasons, right? The human it needs to make sense for the human. But from a like more logistical standpoint, I would say fiber and veggies are not included in macros, right? Because veggies, if you eat like an entire head of broccoli, it's like 10 calories, right? You can input it for sure. It definitely counts in there. And some apps do count fiber well. Um, but veggies are very underappreciated, underemphasized when you look at macros. And so coming from my stance, coming from my education, knowing what I do about food, that is it's a huge food group that is totally missing from this tool. And so you really do need veggies, and I'll explain that in balanced plate. So another con is if you are aiming for the wrong goals and you're even if you're hitting those goals, but it's wrong for your body because it's too generic, it's not going to give you the results that you want. And I talked about this earlier in the series earlier this week, but say you've been dieting for years, your metabolism stalled out. You actually need to increase your calories so your body can heal, so you can build muscle, so you can actually lose weight. Um, I remember one of my clients, Kelly, she came in, she was like, had been counting macros for 3 years. She was like, I know exactly my macros. I eat 1,600 calories a day. I work out 6 days a week. I have less toning than I did in the beginning, and I'm gaining weight. What the hell? And so in this case, she was overtraining and not eating enough. Kelly, by the time that she finished my program, she was eating 2,500, I'm sorry, 2,050 calories. Um, 2050, and she was working out 1 day less a week, and yet she lost 14 pounds in 4 months. She hadn't lost 14 pounds in the 3 years before that because she wasn't eating enough. So she loved counting macros. She wanted to keep doing it, but she had the wrong goal in mind. And so, of course, she didn't get the results because her body needed to heal first. And so that's the part of bio individualization that macros miss. And having, I would say, like having a coach that has the experience to say, this is what you really need, I think makes a really big difference. And then also the accountability and the follow through to see it through. But that's beyond the scope of today. So knowing the right target, I guess, is the really, really most important thing of macros. So let's talk about balance plate. So with a balance plate, if you couldn't tell by now, this is my preference. I will always recommend a balance plate over macros for the client that I tend to talk to who is already overwhelmed and stressed out and has a million things going on, and they just don't want to count macros. In my example, Kelly, she did. She wanted to count macros. I don't have a single person right now counting macros in my program because they don't like it. It's not a tool that works for them. But I'll tell you what balance plate is. You do have to pay attention to what you eat. You do have to have some tool so you can see progress, but it doesn't have to take up, like, it doesn't have to be a second job. It doesn't have to take up hours of your day in order to see results because eating real food makes a big difference. So let's talk about a balance plate. When I talk about a balance plate, and you see this in the picture, you still see those food groups represented. You still see protein, you still see carbs, fats. You'll see another example. I typically put like fats in the middle because we don't want a ton of them. They do have a lot of calories, but we definitely need them for brain health and hormone health and all the things. So we want fats in there, but I show veggies as being a very important part of your plate. And when we break it down, veggies actually take up half of your plate. Protein takes up about a quarter of your plate. Carbs take up about a quarter of your plate. So we can break it down. You can look at it visually and make sure that you have all the food groups there. As I said on the last slide, this is an emphasis on whole foods. You're getting nutrition from whole foods. And that's something that macros doesn't emphasize as much because, especially because the apps scan all the barcodes, processed foods are easier to know exactly the specifics. And at least for my experience with coaches, it wasn't explained to me how important whole foods are. So I'm going to explain that to you so you don't make the same mistake that I did, which took me years to figure out is we're going to get way more nutrition. And by that, I mean like vitamins and minerals and fiber and things that heal your body when we eat whole foods. And we're going to be able to digest it better. It's going to actually promote more of that healing aspect compared to processed foods. So whole foods is important. Portion size, I would say, is more important than exact grams. So you might look at things in cups or tablespoons or the size of your palm, which is what I'm going to show you today. Instead of feeling like, oh, I have to know, I have to get exactly 6.5 ounces of chicken, right? That feels very restrictive to me. Where if I say, oh, grab a cup of this, that feels doable. When I go out, we have a little music performance for my child tonight. We're going out to dinner beforehand. I'm not going to be at dinner with a food scale weighing out what I'm going to eat. Instead, I'm going to look at my hand. I'm going to say, I need at least that much protein. I don't want to eat too many carbs, but I want to eat the right amount of carbs. I'm going to eat about that much carbs. So portion size is key. That makes it feel much easier in the long term. And then you have the vitamins and minerals for healing because it is coming from whole foods. So what is your balance plate goal? So unlike ChatGPT, where I can open it up and I can be like, here's exactly how many calories you need, and you need exactly this many grams of protein. I can't necessarily say this is exactly what you need, just showing you right here. It's more nuanced, it's more personalized. And here's why. Here's what I'm looking at when I calculate a client's when I look at their specific goals, here's what I'm looking at. What have you done in the past? How long have you been really focusing on nutrition? Has it been years, right? You can't be in a calorie deficit forever. Perhaps we need to increase your portion sizes. We need to get you an extra half cup of carbs at dinner or lunch or whatever. And so I talked about it earlier in the week, but we cycle through a calorie deficit and then we go into a build phase, a reverse diet with more. And then you might cycle through maintenance, right? So there's different phases that your body goes through because we don't want you to hit a plateau. We want your body to continue to see progress. And so that means not falling flat with, I guess, what our goals are, but kind of keeping a moving target. I also think it's really underemphasized in the macros world, but food sensitivities are a really key part of food. And so often, and just saying the big three offhand, it's often dairy, gluten, and eggs. I know eggs is a surprising one, but when I do food sensitivity tests, these almost always come back. At least two of the three come back with food sensitivities. And so you're getting this inflammation from your food and you don't necessarily know it, but hey, dairy's got high protein. I'm going to have, Greek yogurt with this. I'm going to eat eggs in the morning, but maybe you have a food sensitivity, and so that's causing inflammation. So looking at that whole person or looking at you as an individual, if you have a food sensitivity, we shouldn't include those foods, right? We should include foods that are much more easier for your body to digest. And then we look at all of the other symptoms, right? What do you have going on with you already? And certain foods are going to promote this. So, for example, just off the cuff, broccoli is going to help you detox extra estrogen. So, if you have the wrong ratio of progesterone to estrogen, your progesterone is usually very low. This is like the hot flashes and the like not feeling good and then having the belly. Like, usually people I see have low progesterone. Well, broccoli can actually help your body detox extra estrogen. So in your meal plan, I'm going to say, hey, I want you to definitely eat more broccoli. Maybe you have joint or back pain. As just picking one of these out here, I'm going to say, hey, you probably should have some things with ginger or turmeric added into your smoothie. Do it here. And those things can actually reduce inflammation, right? We can heal ourselves through food. Same thing with bloating. Say you have a lot of bloating, but you're taking your probiotic every day and you're having fermented foods. Well, those might actually be making your bloating worse because you're introducing those supposed to be beneficial bacteria to an already inflamed gut. And so your body, it bloats already based on the foods that you're currently eating, based on all the other things you have going on, because we need to heal your gut before we can actually have those types of foods that generally are beneficial. I know I just went in real depth there, but that's what I do with my clients. So it's never a one size fits all approach. I don't just type in, oh, you need 1,700 calories in this macros breakdown. ChatGPT can do that. That's why I exist as a human to actually help you through this, right? Because you are different from the person next to you. So let's talk, and going back to this as being a more general approach, let's talk about how to build a balanced plate. Like, what are we going to do in general? Here's what this looks like. So we're going to have protein. Protein is important. It helps your body heal, helps your muscles grow, even helps digestion, helps your brain work, all the things. So we need protein. That's about a palm size. You want that to be roughly a quarter of your plate. Some examples, generally lean protein. We want chicken, we want shrimp, tempeh, tofu, beans. If you are vegetarian, we want that. Salmon. I love salmon because it has omega-3s, also helps with inflammation, right? So we have protein on our plate, takes up about a quarter of our plate. And then we have veggies. Veggies, this is like if I were to take like 1 to 2 handfuls, right? It takes up about half of your plate. Everyone's going to have slightly different portions, slightly different recommendations on types of food that would be helpful exactly for you. But these veggies, there's a lot of them. These are some of the ones that I tend to see most often. I tend to eat most often. So I love broccoli. That's my number one favorite. Asparagus, which is in season right now. Bell peppers, arugula, berries. I love to put berries in my smoothie in the morning. Mushrooms. I don't love mushrooms, but go you if you like mushrooms. Cucumbers, microgreens. My face is here. Spinach. So lots of different veggies, right? These are fibrous veggies. They do have good fiber. They help with digestion. They help with those minerals. We want carbs. You're going to maybe be a little confused here because I'm going to show you some veggies, but these are starchy vegetables. So they have more starch, they have more calories, they're going to keep you full, they're going to provide energy. In addition to what you might think of already as carbs, being like the more grains, right? So sweet potatoes, yeah, they're a vegetable. They are also in the carb category for me. Whoops, going the wrong way. Then we have carrots, any sort of grain. So I love quinoa. Quinoa and oats, gluten-free grains are generally my preference. Rice being another good gluten-free grain. Potatoes. These are some great carbs to go with. Again, that's roughly a palm size. That's about a quarter of your plate. And then we have healthy fats, which don't show up necessarily on the plate because they're usually a dressing or they're cooked in it. But when you think about healthy fats, it's like a tablespoon or two. It's roughly the size of your thumb. And you'll recognize these, right? We have olive oil, we have avocado oil or avocados themselves, coconut oil or coconut milk, nut milks, any of those being healthy fats. So this is when you put it all together, what a balanced plate looks like. That's a beautiful example, but you can break it down, right? We have the healthy fats with the avocado. We've got some quinoa in there. For carbs, we've got lots of veggies that take up roughly half your plate, and then another quarter of your plate or so. Bio individual here, you might need a little more protein, but that's your lean protein right there, right? We could break it down and make it more simple. Doesn't have to be Pinterest perfect and beautiful, as long as it, fits your goals. So it might just be a little more simple like that. And your healthy fats don't always show up, but they would be in there too, right? All right, that's what our healthy plate looks like. So half plate of colorful veggies. Cool. So there are pros and cons to this, just like there are pros and cons to macros. I think the pros outweigh it here. This is going to be my preference. You also, just like having macros, you have a specific goal to hit. You have a tool to use to get you results, which is awesome. And I know from experience, it definitely works. This tool works well and it gets you results. My favorite reason that I love this, using this with clients, is because my clients take a picture. I've timed it. It takes less than 11 seconds. 11 seconds is if I'm taking my time. And if I were to upload in my app, it takes 11 seconds at the most, and I can give them feedback. I'm like, hey, I can see that you didn't have enough protein last week. You didn't have enough veggies, right? Whatever it is. No, I'm not as specific as an app saying, oh, you missed out on 26 grams of protein, right? Like I'm not that specific, but from an overview, I can absolutely tell if you are on track with your food or not. The other pro is that balanced plates are going to be individualized. So they're going to work for your body and for your goals, whether you're in a build phase and a reverse diet, whether you are in a calorie deficit, whether you're just trying to maintain and keep a healthy diet, right? Like no matter where you are, it's going to be something you can adjust and work on. And I do think because it takes way less time and it's just emphasizing the whole foods, it makes it a lot more realistic long term. It's easier for you to eyeball. Like when I go out to eat tonight at the restaurant, I can eyeball it. It takes way less time. It's more likely for you to follow through, which is, of course, the goal. We need this to be something that works for your life. There is a con to having a balanced plate. It's not as many cons as counting macros. But from my perspective as a coach, it takes me longer to review it because it's not automatic. Like I have to go through each picture and say, yes, this is good, or no, I would recommend this instead. And so it takes me more time. You would want that feedback from your coach, from your app, whatever, so you know that you're on track. So that accountability piece is key. But that's not for you to worry about. That's for me as your coach to worry about. All right, so putting all of this together, I'm going to add this into the chat in just a moment. So if you're live, hold on just a moment after I hit finish recording, and I will send you this balanced meals checklist. For anyone watching the replay, you'll just look in the description and it'll say balanced meals checklist. Click here and click there. What that is a checklist when you're building a meal. Here are the things that you should have. So taking all these slides, making it into a single page for you, making it really easy. So download the checklist, try to follow through with your meals this weekend. Or, hey, on Sunday, maybe you meal prep for the week ahead. Maybe you incorporate this into your meals, right? So that's simple homework, but let's apply this. Don't just learn it, take it in, and then do nothing about it. You have to actually apply it in order for it to work, right? So if you want more input, if you want, hey, I would love Megan to actually look at my meals, then book a call with me. It's called a nutrition audit. It's short, it's free, it's 10 or 15 minutes. What I'm going to ask is, what do you eat What's a typical breakfast look like? What does a typical lunch look like? Why might you not be seeing progress? So this is especially important if you feel like you've been trying everything right and nothing is working. Sometimes a simple tweak with nutrition is all you need. And if that's the case, and it's like, oh, you just need to do this one thing, do not pay for a coaching program, right? Just do the one thing and see if it works. Usually, there's more than one thing. That's why this series is 8 days because it's hard to pinpoint one topic, more than one topic, and put it all together, right? But I want you to be able to walk away with some actionable steps. So I have times next week and the week after if you want to book. I'll also, if you are live, throw that in or put it in the description with the link to book. But I would love to chat with you and get you on the right page, right? Like, here's what I see right now. Here's exactly what I would recommend moving forward. So you have some actionable places to start. And yeah, remembering your homework for this weekend is to try the balance plate. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording, and I will meet you all back Monday for the next one.